Bishop, I feel better already. Bishop Williamston, members of the 2023 Louisiana United Methodist Church Conference. Bishop, in the proposed budget that CFA will be bringing today, I want to tell you that this budget is filled with joy and hope. Because regardless of the amount of the budget, God has blessed us enormously. And we will take this and we will use it to the best of His kingdom. Today, I'm going to talk with you at the beginning a little bit about apportionments and connectionalism. Someone asked me, what do those two things have to do with each other? I said, they're wonderful. They're the example of what we do as a connectional church. We come together. We pool our resources. We pool our strengths. We pool ourselves together here today. And we are connected. And we are connected to do the work of the church through the annual conference. Our work together as we've gone through these difficult times in the past few months has been tenuous, and there's been a lot of things that we've had to consider. But we've worked with Board of Trustees, we've worked with Board of Pensions, and we've looked at every area that we can in a short period of time to try and gather as much information as we can to construct the most realistic budget for your conference as is possible. We want to make sure that we continue that work, because as we work smaller as a conference, it's going to require more laypersons to be involved. It's going to require more work at the annual conference level that's not been done by lay people before or lay involvement. We're going to have to step up, and we're going to have to get up to be able to do that. So I ask you to think of those things. Today, I'm going to give you reports 1, 2, and 3 that we normally do. We will not be voting on these reports today. We will simply be giving these to you to study, think about, and raise your questions. Report number 1 is one that you're very familiar with. It is of the finance and administrative matters and policies and what we do year to year. Very little is unchanged in that report. You can find it on pages 27 through 30 of the pre-conference report. Report number 2 is the annual annual financial reports that are on pages 31 to 33 that talk about specific numbers and historicals. There's an addendum to that has now, as you put forth to us a couple of conferences ago, that you wanted to see quarterly financials. We have complied with that request, and that report is also in supplement number 1. Report number 3 is where the rubber meets the road. It's the apportionment budget, the expenditures and financial reports, and plus this will all be found in your supplement number 2. Now, I'd like to tell you something, and I want you to repeat after me. Apportionment budgets are not spending budgets.
Apportionment budgets are not spending budgets.
Thank you. It's very important that you understand that CFA apportions what we ask of the local churches. The spending budgets can be totally different because each ministry area may have reserves, may have other sources, may have grants that allow them to go beyond whatever the amount of the apportionment budget might be. So let's talk about the change in the overall apportionment impact from 2023 to 2024. I hope you can see this, but we had an apportionment budget in 2023 of $6,878,000. We lost apportionments of $959,000 from 2022 disaffiliating churches, and we lost apportionments in 2023 of $1,215,159. When we subtract that from the $6 million apportionment budget. That leaves us with the staying church apportionments of $3,817,078. Now, realistically, we know that staying churches may be facing some financial headwinds in the future. So we've built in 10% and reduced our what we call the apportionment budget by that amount, so that we will only be assessing cash expenditures of $3,435,370. We think that's a prudent thing to do. We hope it's not necessary, but in the event that it is, we have some room there. On the next slide, I talk about adjusting to a reduced conference budget. Well, conference expenditures have to be reduced. We all know that from what we've gone through. But the disaffiliation fund will allow us a transition period over the next 3 years, so we do not have to so severely impact the budget for 2024. So what we have done, we call it the disaffiliation fund, and we're going to use a portion of that over the next 3 years as we reduce and examine the ministry areas that we can to get us down to the appropriate total apportionment budget. We can't budget for 3 years. We can only budget for 1 year going out, but we can do forecasting. So all of that is included in the reports that have been given to you. But at the same time, CFA pledges to you we will not increase apportionments to the local church. This is critically important, and the way in which the Conference Board of Trustees drafted and sought your approval of the disaffiliation agreement allows this to happen. So thank you, Board of Trustees. Again, the disaffiliation budget, disaffiliation fund allows us to make those changes. But now let me talk about some specific areas that I know you're going to have some questions about. So, first of all, let's talk about the General Conference and South Central jurisdiction and the amount that we're apportioning. The General Church ask to us was $1,698,930. We've reduced that by 37%, the total impact of the disaffiliating churches. And we are apportioning to the General Church $1,068,436. It is only appropriate that we do that. South Central jurisdiction has been reducing their budget, and their ask was $51,000, which is a 29% decrease from 2023. And we felt that since they had done decreases in earlier years, we left that number the same. So those two big numbers are kind of at the top of every budget that we prepare. Now, going on to the ministry areas and how we can budget for them, yet still carry out all of the needed ministries and missions that we want to accomplish as a conference. We use all known reserves. So we take all of the reserves and carry forwards that are in those ministry areas, and we compare that to their expenditures. In cases where their reserves dramatically are greater than the amount that they're actually spending from year to year, we're asking those ministry areas to use reserves. So, and again, an apportionment budget is not a spending budget. So in budgeting, we use the expense history to make these budget allocations to each of these ministry areas. We will review those every year, and depending on what opportunities come before us, we may reallocate them dramatically next year or the year beyond. We're not locked into this plan, but it is a plan that will allow us to use the disaffiliation funds to keep all of the current ministries in place and at the same time not increase apportionments to the local church. So the disaffiliation fund, this may be repetitive to you, but I just wanted to make sure that you saw exactly where that came from. The lost apportionments from 2022 are $959,000. The lost apportionments from 2023, $2,430,000, which gives us the $3,389,000 we call the disaffiliation fund balance that we use a portion of each year through 2027. So our proposed budget, again, selected items with detailed explanation. Congregational transportation and development. Sorry, I've been in Washington too much. This has been a priority of the Louisiana Conference forever, and should be, because it is how we grow the church. We've got accumulated reserves in this area, though, of over $5 million, almost $5.1 million. The expenditures, the programs that have been out there and put in place in the last few years simply have not required that much of the budget. So, for 2024, we are not apportioning anything to this area. And we're asking them to use their reserves for their expenses as they see fit. The next line item is the Board of Higher Education and Campus Ministry. Accumulated reserves in that area are $207,000. Their spend in 2022 was $404,000. Our apportionment will be able to fill the gap if they use part of their reserves. So our apportionment budget is $346,000. I know there's a lot of conversation about this area and how it should go forth. And again, that will factor in to what we do in future years, to where those funds may be reallocated if mission needs are such. The last one is Board of Pensions, which is actually a bright spot to us. Board of Pensions has done well through a number of different items, and their investment income is such that we are not required to give them an apportionment of $125,000. That was our apportionment amount last year that we gave that. They've got investment income that would do that. So they came to us and said, we're okay. No apportionment dollars necessary. We have internal funds that can take care of where we are. Now, the next slide may be difficult to read, so I want you to certainly go back to the supplement and read the total summary 2024 apportionment budget. I'm not going to go through each and individual line. I know that you may have questions about other lines that I've not mentioned here today or about those lines, and I'd ask you to bring those tomorrow. But that is the summary apportionment budget for 2024. And then the next slide is what we have forecasted as a budget for 2025 through 2027. Each year reducing the disaffiliation fund without increasing apportionments to the local church. Bishop Williamston, that concludes my report for today on reports number 1, 2, and 3, and I will now entertain any questions.
Are there any questions? Make your way to a microphone and identify yourself, name, charge, or if you're clergy or lay. Okay, microphone 3.
Greetings, annual conference. Casey Roberson, Camp for Memorial United Methodist Church, Baton Rouge. Is it appropriate at this time to ask if there is the possibility of looking at things like reallocation of funds for, say, for instance, the ministerial emergency fund, where we could use some of the overage or other funds that are kind of like those unused funds, and I'm trying to think of the one that you just mentioned.
Okay.
So that we could put it in the minister's
But your primary
fund.
question's about
Yes.
the ministerial emergency fund?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sandy, can you help me here? Can you tell me what what our expenses were in that fund? Oh no, she dropped her printout.
I'm sorry, Sandy.
Sandy O'Brien, is she here? Okay, she's at microphone 5, Sandy.
I'm here every night, thanks.
All right. So Sandy, I think to answer the question, what we'd like to know is the amount of expenses that we had last year in that particular ministry area and what the total reserves are.
Thank you, Kenny, and thanks for the question. If you turn to the pre-conference report on page 40, you'll see a line item that refers to the Minister's Emergency Fund on line 242. We started the year with $103,413. Sorry, the print's really long. We collected an additional $10,000 through various offerings, including one that was held at the clergy session annually. We've spent $4,500 of that, and we have a remaining ending balance of $110,000 of unused Minister's Emergency Fund.
I think that might be a pretty good example of an area that has adequate reserves based upon what their expenditures have been, unless you have other information.
The other reason why I prefaced the question about the allocation of those resources is because typically when there's a storm, a major storm, like Hurricane Katrina, most of our members don't realize that some of the same funds we extend to others as a courtesy, I mean, even our church members, does not extend to ministers. And sometimes I think that, and I don't even know if we were even given anything through the Minister's Emergency Fund. My experience has just really been Katrina, but I just wanted to try to see if there could be more of a dedicated amount that could be, since there is some excess. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your question.
Kenny, if I may add.
Microphone 5? I'm
Yes,
sorry, the
it's
lights.
Sandy. It's Sandy, Kenny.
Okay.
If I could expound on that a little bit. In the past, every time there has been a disaster and there's been a need to reach out to our ministers with the Minister's Emergency Fund, the Cabinet has been very generous in extending multiple grants to clergy across the conference that have experienced disasters. And this is not just a one-time thing. Possibly, pre-Katrina, there were not funds available, but since I've been here in the 9 years, there actually have been grants made when disasters occur to clergy.
Okay. And it's probably appropriate to give a shout out to all of you members of the clergy that contribute to the Ministry's Emergency Fund. So thank you. Microphone, excuse me.
Microphone 2, identify yourself, name, whether you're clergy or lay, and your charge.
Matt Rawl, clergy, Asbury United Methodist Church. Mr. Beauvais, good to see you. Can you put back up on the screen the church extension slide? I didn't get a picture of it. I'm sorry. I know, but this is easier. Can you put no, not that one. 2 ones before that.
Which one, Matt?
The lack of spending in church, the church extension slide. One more.
Go back one more.
One more. No,
Right there?
the other way.
No?
Back.
Congregational development slide.
Okay. It's Slide 10, Todd?
Will it help if we make these slides available?
Yes.
Okay, we'll make the slides available.
Cool, got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Blessings.
Thank you. That's all right. Okay. Microphone 4, please identify yourself, your name, clergy or lay, and your charge.
J.C. Richardson, Cornerstone United Methodist Church, New Orleans. And I want to make a friendly recommendation. The friendly recommendation is this, that we change the name of the disaffiliation budget to mark the spirit of this occasion by naming it the Hope Budget or the Vow Budget.
Will you go back and say that again? We didn't all hear you.
We heard hope. We didn't hear the second
Change the
word.
name to... Oh, the Vile Budget. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-oh, they streaming this, y'all. All right now. All right, all right. Are there any other questions? Okay, microphone 2, please identify yourself.
Donnie Wilkinson, Broadmoor Methodist in Baton Rouge. First of all, I second the motion that we rename that the Vile Budget. Is it the consensus of the House that we would like to see that happen? So let it be said, so let it be done. Okay. Several times in the CFA budget, Kenny, there's a phrase, exigent circumstances. I know what the word exigent means. I would know, is CFA defined what an exigent circumstance is, and what is the process whereby the powers declared, conferred, due to exigent circumstances are implemented? And in what ways will we, the conference, be informed when we have reached an exigent circumstance that these extraordinary measures need to be taken?
Okay, so your question is, what process CFA goes through to declare an exigent circumstance?
Yeah.
And then the reporting back to the annual conference?
Yeah, that's certainly part of it, but what defines an exigent circumstance? I know it can't be 10% loss in apportionment because we baked that into the budget. So what's an exigent circumstance?
Okay, Sandy.
Sandy?
No.
I'm sorry, but
No, y'all don't understand.
yeah.
I mean, Sandy, to the best of your knowledge, the last time that we had an exigent circumstance, could you describe that to us?
I'll certainly try. Thank you.
Okay.
Please, I'm just an
I hope
accountant.
this will
I'm not a
answer
public
Donnie's
speaker. The last time we had the discussion in the CFA meeting, it was probably in 2019, right after the special session, the General Conference special session. And what the discussion surrounded was, what do we do if we have a drop-off in collections of apportionments based on the budget? And we ran bunches of scenarios and did a bunch of forecasting. And at that time, we decided that we were not at a point where anything could be deemed an exigent circumstances, such as a significant drop in collections. And I think in this instance, significant can be something greater than 10%, because at that point, we had never historically realized anything less than, I want to say 90% or 92% in collection rates. So I guess to answer the question, I'm not sure we have yet reached an exigent circumstance, but I'm pretty sure we'll know it when we get there. Because of we depend on the collection of apportionments throughout the year. And if we don't have apportionment dollars coming in, that's where we rely on reserves too. And that's built into, that's not really an exigent circumstance at that point. It's available to be used to fund the mission and ministry of the church.
So Donnie, to answer your question, and I thought this was going to be the case, we have not had one. We have discussed it and what we should do in the event, and that's what has been discussed and is in the minutes of the CFA.
I would appreciate it if CFA would put on the next agenda item to have a conversation and define exigent circumstances. There are extraordinary powers given to redo the budget due to exigent circumstances, and define what is meant by exigent circumstance, what is the process we declare one, and then how will that be communicated to us, the body, we are the conference, how will it be communicated to us so that we can be aware of what's going on, and how we can all work together to address whatever's happening.
Okay, we will do that. We will put that on our agenda for the next meeting, but now I'm going to ask you if you will attend that meeting with
Absolutely.
us, and we would like your input on that, because it sounds like you have some particular ideas that would be of value.
Absolutely.
And so
I'd
I
be
would
more than
love
glad to.
I would love for you to participate in that conversation.
Absolutely. Well, one final thing. I do appreciate the part in the budget in the CFA report where it says the quarterly reports have been updated. Does anybody know what that link is for that? It's in the book here.
It's in the supplement.
Yeah.
Just a moment. I believe it is.
Would you read it for us?
Updated
Number 5.
for a more user-friendly link. So there should be, if you download the newest version of Supplement 2 or 1, whichever where the link is, it should say la-umc.org/reserve funds, and that should bring you to that page.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Microphone 1, please identify yourself, name, clergy, lay,
Thank you,
and your
Bishop.
charge.
Darrell Tate, semi-retired. Plaquemine and Donaldsonville. I need Sandy back up at her mic because I think we can answer that question from my brother over there about the needs after a storm. Sandy.
Yes, sir. How may I help?
After Katrina, the legislation got changed in the discipline for the powers of the bishop. When she writes a grant, a portion of those dollars can be used for local churches and pastors in times of need. Is that still a case? Or do you know?
Okay, which funds? I'm sorry, the minister's emergency fund?
UMCOR.
UMCOR funds usually have specific requirements on how we can spend the money.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been, the last few grants that I've been a part of with the conference, it has been specifically for individuals who have suffered or sustained damage directly to that specific storm, whether it's a hurricane or the flood.
Okay, thank you. I think, Dr. Van, you might want to check into that. There's supposed to be a portion of those grants that can be used for churches in times of need. That was passed.
Reverend Tate, I think you are correct in that the built-in percentage for UMCOR grants that have some other stipulations now as opposed to post-Katrina, but is up not to exceed 10% of those allocated funds can be spent on local church and local church issues. The rest of that has to be spent to outside our connection, which is a conversation that the trustees and CFA are having going forward as well. So that dovetails nicely into other reports that will come.
Amen. All right. Microphone 3, please identify yourself, name, clergy, lay, and your charge.
Tommy Harrell, lay delegate from First United Methodist Church in Winfield. And my question is to the Finance Committee, will any consideration be given in the assignment of the apportionment askings from each church as to what damage has been done by disaffiliation, namely loss of membership, and in our situation in Winfield, it wasn't necessarily the numbers, it was the people that left were very large givers to our budget. And I just wondered if any consideration would be given to individual churches in that regard going forward.
At the time that we prepared the budget, we knew that was going to be an issue, which is why we put in the 10% cushion on overall apportionments, so that if a church is faced with that, we can absorb that through that cushion. Individually or a program for specific changes, we did not. We did it on a global basis because we really didn't know how to attack that at that point in time. As time goes on and we get some experience and some time passes in the local churches, we may be able to come up with a different method.
Okay, I have a subsequent question, but I won't pursue that right now.
Okay.
All right, microphone 4, please identify yourself, name, clergy or lay, and your church.
Good afternoon, Jess Trahan, layperson but director of Wesley United Campus Ministry. I think this is the day we knew was eventually going to come when these conversations started brewing 4 years ago. And the question or suggestion or prayer I uplift at this moment is, how can we start a conversation with our campus ministries given the insane climate that we are navigating right now, to be more sustainable, to equip us in our local context to connect with new, different ways, to start absorbing some of the changes that are going to be coming from funding. I don't have a blueprint for what that may look like, but I appeal to our experts in front of us here, whether that be through church vitality work, through the foundation, whatever creative ways we may be able to explore that make sense in our given context to help us continue to exist. I think if you ask anyone, college students and young adults are a squirrely bunch. They don't pay our bills. We don't even know what happens to them sometimes. But we are the connection into adulthood for these young people. And I think it's meaningful work, even if it is not glorious. So I ask for help. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
We thank you for those comments, and
We have one more question at microphone 3. I mean
Okay.
2 for you. Microphone 2, identify yourself, name, church, and clergy or lay.
Thank you. Austin Reinhardt, clergy, Zachary, United Methodist Church, Baton Rouge District. Kenny, I hope it's a simple question. Serving a church whose insurance canceled on us my first day into the appointment, I am wondering, and looking at the budget on page 6 of the supplemental report, when is the last time we've had a strategic conversation about if 527 North Boulevard, the physical property, is absolutely necessary for the Episcopal office? We talked several times in our boots on the ground tours about decentralizing the conference office. When's the last time we had a strategic conversation if over $100,000 in property maintenance, insurance, recurring and non-recurring expenses are the best strategic move for our conference?
all right, I'm not going to duck the question, but I'm going to duck the question. Because that conversation would need to start in trustees. And I think it's a valid point, and I think your point's well made.
Thank you, Kenny. Appreciate it.
Okay. Oh, microphone 1, please identify yourself, name, clergy, lay, and your church.
Clay Harrison, clergy, Legacy, and Houghton. I have 2 questions. One, with so many changes in insurance across Louisiana since recent storms and insurance bankruptcies, did we have any of our churches that were in the process of reclaiming anything from insurance, and in that process that the insurance then went bankrupt and we did not reclaim anything from them? Do we know?
That is a trustee's question.
Okay. That would be a trustees, not a finance.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
You can bring that question back when they
That's
come.
fine. Didn't know if that was here or there. And then
Okay.
the other question I have is on the 3-year plan of the funds we showed it a moment ago. Is that 3 years is to wean off using those current funds set aside via the VIAL fund or whatever we're going to call it, so that then we no longer are needing that money? Or at the end of that time, what are we going to do to make up that money if we're not raising apportionments? Is there a plan for that? Is there a thought for that? Where are we going? Are we getting to the end of that and then we're just not going to have that money anymore, therefore our budget's smaller? Or at the end of those 3 years, do we need to then make up that money some other way?
I would think that those ministry areas would need to be having active conversations at this point, re-examining the ministry. Is there a different way that we go about it? Again, think small. But then again, if there's an opportunity that is serving us well, certainly that would be one that we may need to expand expenditures on. It's going to take examination of the ministry and basically its effectiveness.
So right now, there's not necessarily a plan that at the end of 3 years, all of a sudden, we as churches, while we haven't had apportionment increases, all of a sudden we have a big balloon where we do now need to meet those demands.
Well, no, we would be taking it down to levels that would be sustainable beyond the 3 years. But between now and 3 years gives all the ministry areas a lot of time to talk about what they want to do.
Just wanted to clarify that point. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for your question. Before we have microphone 2, is anyone else who wants to have a word at a microphone? Okay. All right, microphone 2, identify yourself again.
Thank you. Thank you. Completely different subject. Donnie Wilkinson, pastor at Broadmoor United Methodist Church. Baton Rouge. Thank you. Thank you. Given the trauma that many of our colleagues went through with the recent storms, it seems as if there is a lack of clarity in exactly how a clergy person whose, for example, home had the roof ripped off, how would they go about applying for the minister's emergency fund? What exactly is that process, and where can that process be found and filled out?
We'll have Van speak to that. He has the process.
It's a procedural question. I'm not prepared, and I would say I would refer you to pre-conference report on that fund. Okay, there's nothing there?
We're getting feedback up here.
It's an easy question.
Here we go. Go ahead. Take it.
So we don't, no mics at all now. Test 1.
Thank you.
Test 1.
You want to go to the podium?
Is it this one?
So the longstanding practice with the Minister's Emergency Fund has been that it has been a cabinet-administered fund. Clergy are invited to participate by a voluntary contribution to it. In most all of the instances where significant events like that happen, the district superintendent over that particular area where the affected pastor in this case may be residing almost automatically comes to the cabinet table with a request for a minister's emergency fund. The cap on it for each one is $1,500. There have been moments when, in extraordinary circumstances, with significant cost of impact, that amount has been increased. But that's the long-standing practice for the minister's emergency fund for most of my time.
And so, if I understand, there's a kind of a practice, but there's not a policy that clearly lays out step A, B, C, D for someone to apply. And then
it is not an application for a minister's emergency. It is a grant that is automatically granted from the cabinet, the bishop and the cabinet. So it's not a fund according to, I guess, longstanding practice. The difference between a practice and a rule might be something that we could go back and look at.
Well, I would appreciate if we would, just because there's a lack of, there's some murkiness about it, wondering how is it done.
Could you repeat that a little clearly? I didn't understand what you just said.
There's some murkiness about how does it work? How can one
Sure.
apply for it? Just if we can take these practices and turn them into policies. In fact, that might be, I know I've had to go back through years of journals to find various policies that we've adopted, and they're not compiled in one place where they're easily accessible so that we can all know what's going on. Would that fall under CFA's purview to collect the policies? Conference, finance, and...
We would be happy, from the cabinet perspective, I'm sure, Bishop, to find out any information and to make all of that more clearly, as much as we can look back at history and how that, and make it as clear as possible. I think you raised a good point.
Good. Well, so if it's not CFA, with the administration part holding up, gathering and disseminating the policies in a similar way, who would be?
Microphone 4, identify yourself.
Hello, Allie Young, Baton Rouge clergy. I'm in the conference office. Donnie, if you go to our website and you use the search feature that is now new and improved, and you type in Ministers Emergency Aid, it'll tell you the policies that were adopted by the 2015 annual conference, and it'll give you the maximum amount and a very brief synopsis of how. It is not a full policy, but it is a starting point, just if you want to search for it.
Thank you.
All right, we have another person at microphone 3. Please identify yourself, your name, clergy or lay, and your church.
Larry Robertson, clergy pastor at the Center Methodist Church, United Methodist. We pay our apportionments in full in January, but this is a brief comment in regards to the bishop's office. Though I preach in Louisiana, I live in Hazelhurst, Mississippi, because the kids and grandkids are there. I can't spell Mississippi, but that's where we live. So I happen to know that the bishop's office in Mississippi was located across the street from the state capitol, which meant it was a hugely important, expensive building. They sold it 10 years ago for a fortune and rented a major part of a church that had died down in excellent condition. Now that church is closing this week, and the whole conference center is in a very good building with very little cost. And boy, did they make $1 million on that building they sold.
Well, all right.
I'm done.
All right. Amen. Yes. It's hard to hear up here. We're working on the sound, so I'm not quite sure I'm hearing everybody's. We got another one, another 2. Okay, hold on a second. I think number 1 came before number 4. So number 1, microphone number 1, your name, your
Diane
church.
Wilkinson, laity,
Okay.
at-large delegate from Shreveport. I have a question about the human needs of our clergy, where I'm aware that the housing was completely destroyed. And what can you do with $1,500 with this is all the way it is, and you just be happy and go on. And so it's taken 3 years to be able for this family to get out of a camper and back into a home. Pastors are human too, and they have needs also. So I would like for us to address this more compassionately.
Okay, thank you. All right. So
Thank you.
Hold on a second. So number 4, microphone 4, identify yourself. And before we go to microphone 4, you're talking to the CFA. Okay, all right. Okay, microphone 4, identify yourself.
My name is Ed Cooper, pastor of the very vile St. Mark's in the French Quarter, along with Aurora on the West Bank. I thought Austin's question was headed in this direction about the cancellation of his insurance on his very first day. For our churches like ours that are struggling to pay these skyrocketing insurance rates, is there any conversations taking place that could help churches like ours, where we could come alongside you or you come alongside us to help? Because we're having to make some real choices. I have some folks saying, we just can't pay it. We just can't pay it and maintain. And so are there conversations happening there, Kenny? Anything that you could say to churches like St. Mark's and Aurora?
There are not active conversations going on specifically to that point. There have been conversations in the past about an insurance fund. That was before disaffiliation. That was before COVID. It is something that probably needs to be resurfaced and discussed again. We hear you. We hear you.
Yeah. As well as I believe the Conference Board of Trustees
Right.
is having active conversations. So give them a little bit to have those conversations and get those going, so we'll have more information. I'm going to go to microphone 5. Identify yourself, name, clergy, lay, your church.
Hi, I am Reverend Amy. I am the pastor of Westlake United Methodist Church in the Lake Charles, Acadiana district. I just wanted to ask, would it be appropriate if I gave a 60-second testimonial to being a recipient of the Minister's Emergency Fund? Is that okay to do?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So I lived in Lake Charles before I got moved to Westlake, which I'm very thankful for. My husband and I had lived in our home. I was in an appointment where there was no parsonage. So we had owned our home for over 10 years, and when Laura hit, we lost it. Delta just kind of did it in, and then we had a freeze and a flood who took away our 2 new cars. So in a 7-month period, we were rendered homeless. And had no cars. So pastor friends of ours lent us a vehicle. We moved in with parents, and a colleague of mine reached out to me and said, email your DS. There is $1,500 waiting for you. We had insurance to help us with our home and our contents, but the cars were another situation. As you know, to take on 2 new car notes, that is difficult to do. So we were blessed. I sent 1 email. I heard back from my DS that I was being graciously given $1,500 to put a down payment on a new vehicle for my family. It was very easy. It was very confidential. I felt safe and secure in a very humbling, that is humbling to ask for help. So just want to let you know it is out there. They are very loving and gracious, and I'm sorry if you don't know about it, but it is very easy. I just wanted to say thank you and let people know it's available.
Thank you.
We thank you for your witness and your testimony to that fund in action. Microphone 1, name.
Daryl Tate again, Acadiana District Pastor. We got hope. The hope is the legislators just passed a piece of legislation to create a self-funded insurance company for churches. I would request the bishop's office through Kathy to write a letter to the governor to ask him on behalf of the 285 churches for him to sign that piece of legislation. The Senate and the House will find the funding over the next 24 to 36 months to create this fund that's going to help the churches, especially in Louisiana and especially south of Alexandria, where the market has closed up. Very few insurance companies are writing churches below Alexandria as of May 25th. So I'll get that information to Catherine, and if we can get that done, Bishop, I think that's going to bring a lot of hope to a lot of churches.
Okay.
Thank you, Daryl.
Amen. Amen. Kenny, I don't see anybody else at microphone. Is there another person over here?
Nope,
Oh,
Carl, somebody's behind you.
okay, all right. Microphone 1, identify yourself.
Carl Klaus, pastor at First United Methodist Church in the great city of Amite, Tangipahoa Parish. And we're all about hope, as we just heard. And there's one way to get revenue, and that's evangelism. And I think if we're all about hope, and yet we're trying to look at budgets and wringing our hands about when our vitality fund runs out, then what are we doing? We need to grow. You cannot cut your way to growth. And so what we need to do is be all about evangelism, all about bringing people. Make our Methodist churches United Methodist churches, the place to go. Build that esprit de corps. You know, we're where you need to be. We want you to find the Lord here in our United Methodist churches. I haven't heard anything about building our kingdom, which brings the revenue. We've got it backwards. build the kingdom, and the revenue will come.
All right. Okay. Microphone 1. Please identify yourself.
Juliet Spencer. I'm at Henning Memorial in Sulphur. Just for a little bit of history and perspective, I was very blessed to receive $1,000 from the ministerial fund, $1,000 in 1992. $1,000 in 92, $1,500 in 2023.
Thank you. Thank you for your information. We have one more, microphone 1. Please identify yourself, name, clergy lay, and your church.
My name is Idella Stevenson. For the last comments I heard drew me up here. I'm up here because I have a question from the district and the conference. In 2023...
Okay, I'm sorry, hold on.
Hold on.
Are you a member of the annual conference?
Well, I was. This is where I was in. That's why I'm asking a question.
Excuse me?
I was last year.
So you're not a delegate to
No,
the...
not now.
Okay, so then it's out of order. You have to... Yes, ma'am. This is about this year. Are you a member to the conference this year? Okay. Okay. Yeah, then you are a guest. Thank you, though. Yes.
Bishop, thank you. That concludes our reporting and answering questions for today.
Let's thank Kenny.